Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Thursday. The weekend is getting closer, everyone. I hope you're having a good day wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. Thank you as always for joining me. I really do appreciate it. It is a bit of a quiet little day in between the Champions League before all the talk about the Premier League game at Sunderland really starts to ramp up with Mikel's press conference tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. That is going to be, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But there is still bits and pieces to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Crystal Palace Carabao Cup quarter-final talks going on between Arsenal, Palace and the Premier League to try and get their fixtures before that quarter-final moved back a day. Will it happen? Don't know yet. But Oliver Glasner, Mikel Arteta want it to happen and talks are going on. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about Granit Xhaka. Of course, Saturday, the narrative is all going to be around the Sunderland captain. Because it's first time he's met Arsenal in a competitive game since his move. He's done a really, really good interview with The Athletic. I'll talk about a few bits he's had to say in that. I'll drop the link down for the interview down into the show notes as well, because it's well worth a read if you get a few minutes, because there's some really good stuff, as always, from Granit when he talks to journalists. So we'll look at that. We've got other bits and pieces to talk about, comments, questions from you guys as well. Round up last night's Champions League action and where Arsenal stand at the end of all of that. So plenty to get stuck into, but we'll start with the fixture sort of congestion issue that Arsenal and Crystal Palace have with the Carabao Cup quarter-final now being moved to December the 23rd. That was announced earlier on in the week. Of course, Arsenal had been hoping it was going to be a week earlier than that. It wasn't. It's been moved to the 23rd, and both Arsenal and Palace have got games scheduled at the moment for the 21st, Premier League games for the 21st. Now, both clubs are pushing to have those games moved back 24 hours. So from the Sunday to the Saturday. Oliver Glasner was talking in his pre-match press conference yesterday ahead of their Conference League game tonight. And he said, we're trying the same thing that Arsenal is. We're trying to move the Leeds game forward to Saturday so that we have 2 days between these games. Let's see. We didn't get a response yet from the Premier League just to have the same situation as Arsenal if their game is moved. Arsenal being very tight-lipped on this, as always, when it comes to Arsenal. But Palace being a little bit more open in terms of exactly what they're trying to do. But Mikel was very clear in his press conference before the game in midweek that he was hoping to get the game moved. I mean, when you look at the fixture list in and around that game, so if you watch on YouTube, you can see them here. It's obviously a trickier run for Palace. So you see there on Sunday, December 21st, that those are the Premier League games that Arsenal and Palace are trying to have moved. So Arsenal go to Everton on the Sunday and Palace go to Leeds. Both clubs want that move back to Saturday, which will be December the 20th. Now, interestingly, Palace have got a game in the Conference League on the Thursday, so that would still be playing 2 games in basically 3 days, Thursday to Saturday, but they would prefer to do that than play the Sunday, Tuesday that they're already scheduled to do. I mean, either way, Palace have got basically an extra game. You look there from the 10th of December onwards, Arsenal got 4 fixtures ended in the Crystal Palace game on the 23rd. Palace have got 5 because they've got 2 Conference League games in there. They've got Manchester City, then they've got Leeds, and then they've got Arsenal. So either way, Arsenal are in a better situation than Palace for this. So I can understand for Palace, this is pretty harsh what they're being asked to do. And I think one of the key things, and I had a question on this actually here from Kyle, says, sorry, going back to the rescheduled Palace fixture, why don't they do it? So if you're competing in Europe, you don't participate in the Carabao Cup that year. That way there'll be no competition overlap, and the winners of the Carabao Cup go into the UEFA Conference League, meaning every year we'd have someone new in Europe, and with teams like Brighton, Palace, Bournemouth, a proper shot at a trophy and a chance of Europe. We'll protect players more and help with the multiple amount of competitions we have. I mean, it's a good idea on paper, that, because at the moment, basically every single year at the moment, if it stays as it is, we're always going to be in this situation where if the quarterfinal or the Carabao Cup rolls around, if a team is in it that is playing in the Conference League, then we're always going to have this fixture clash. Fortunately, last year for the competition, Chelsea went out, and so we didn't have this situation. But this year, because Palace have stayed in it, it's arose. And if it stays the same next year, if nothing changes, then we're going to be in the same situation again. So this suggestion from Carl on paper is, you can understand the thinking of it, but I don't think the Carabao Cup would want that at all. The Carabao Cup wouldn't want the biggest teams taken out of the competition, because the Football League wouldn't, because this is all part of the Football League sort of TV rights deal that they sell. And if the big teams are taken out of the competition, then the TV rights money that they're going to receive is just going to go that way, because that's just how it works. The most, viewers want to see the bigger teams in the competition. As horrible as that sounds, it is the truth. And I also think the smaller clubs in it, and certainly the lower league clubs, don't really want that either, because they want the opportunity to play the bigger clubs. Because if they get that big sort of prize draw, then they're going to get a hell of a lot of money. If you don't have that opportunity, then they're going to look at it and think, well, realistically, we're not going to win the competition, and now we're not going to get the chance to play the big clubs and have those glamour ties. I mean, Port Vale against Arsenal earlier in the competition was their biggest home attendance in 25 years. It was a TV game. They would have made an awful lot of money out of that. So I don't really see something like that happening. I also think for the big clubs, and I spoke about this earlier, that as much as it can be seen a little bit as a sort of hindrance, the Carabao Cup, I also think, given the size of the squads that these clubs have now, it is kind of a valuable competition as well, because it allows managers the chance to give minutes to players who need some minutes and got to stay involved. And the Carabao Cup has given Mikel Arteta, for example, the opportunity to do that with some players this season, whereas Ethan Waneri started, but his 2 starts this season before the Champions League in midweek were in the Carabao Cup. And if we weren't in that competition, then he'd be struggling for game time. And Miles Lewis-Skelly, you have in the same situation, other players as well. So I don't really, as frustrating as this is for the clubs in terms of the fixture scheduling and all that, I still think they would prefer to be in it for various reasons. And I still think the lower league clubs would prefer them to be in it as well. So I don't really see a situation where this suggestion, Kyle, would really work. I just don't think there'll be enough support for it. So we'll wait and see anyway what happens when it comes to the fixtures. But either way, I mean, going back to those fixtures there, you can see why it is a difficult situation. The thing with the Everton game for Arsenal as well, that is a TV game. It's been moved to the TV. And will Sky agree to that? So there's lots of different sort of stakeholders that need to agree for something for this to move to happen. So we'll see if it does or not. But that's the latest when it comes to talks with the Premier League over Arsenal's Carabao Cup fixture. Right. Quick roundup of the Champions League there. If you watch on YouTube, you can see the Champions League table now that everyone has played. So 3 teams left in the competition with a perfect record. And interestingly, Arsenal have to play the other 2 in the coming weeks. Obviously, they've got Bayern Munich coming up, and then they've got Inter Milan away at the San Siro coming up as well. San Siro has now been announced officially that they are going to knock that stadium down and build a new one, AC Milan and Inter Milan. 71,000 stadium capacity. So they're actually going to reduce the stadium capacity, but build a stadium that's fit for current purpose. And anyone who's been to San Siro will realize it's not really fit for current purpose, but it is a special stadium. And it's why I made the trip there last year to watch the Inter Arsenal game. I was so desperate to get to that stadium for the first time before it was knocked down. So if you haven't yet, and you've in your mind you think I've got to get to San Siro before it goes, then you need to get a move on, because it has now been officially announced it is going to shut. So anyway, 3 teams left with maximum points. Man City obviously winning yesterday, really good win for them against Dortmund, 4-1, looking pretty scary when they get going. Manchester City, Phil Foden coming back to some form as well, which is obviously interesting from a domestic point of view. And then Newcastle, another win for them yesterday at home. So strong at home in the Champions League, so bad away from home. It's a weird season for Newcastle they're having, but that's how the table is shaping up. Looking good from an Arsenal point of view, but still plenty to play for to sort of make sure that he can guarantee qualification into the top 8. Right, let's talk about this man now, Granit Xhaka. As I said before, the full interview to this is down in the show notes, links to it. I do urge you to go and read it, because it's a really great interview. Granit's he's one of my favorite players to interview. Granit Xhaka is just, when you get Granit, we call him, we always used to call him sort of mixed zone heroes, like Socrates, for example, was brilliant whenever he came through the mix zone, and it was like, oh, we're getting Socrates after the game. Great, we're going to get some really good quotes from him. Other players, you think, when they come, you're like, oh no, this is going to be hard work. Socrates was great, but Granit Xhaka is always number one. It's just a brilliant interview. Always gives proper quotes, doesn't really hide anything, doesn't toe any sort of club line or anything like that. He says what he wants to say. And he was brilliant in this interview that the Athletic have done ahead of Sunday's game, where he's going to meet Arsenal for the first time, obviously, in competitive action since leaving. So just a couple of bits in terms of, he was talking a lot about Mikel Arteta, obviously, and how he's changed things at Arsenal and how he kept Granit at the club after everything that went on in that game against Crystal Palace and everything. So this is what he said about when sort of Arteta took over and how he immediately knew, Xhaka immediately knew that Arsenal had got someone who's going to turn things around at Arsenal. Said, I'll never forget the first day Mikel came in at the training ground. We had a big room and there were some chairs in there, but the chairs were absolutely everywhere. It was chaos. He took all of the people who were working in the building into this room and said, guys, from the outside, this is what you look like, chaos. So everyone takes a chair and puts it in the right place. And he says, I want you to be like this every day. You think, wow, he's already started with these standards the first day. After that, he was building our mentality, standards in training, pre-training, activation, recovery. He brought people in. He did a great job. It was unbelievable work to work with him because he saw football in a different way. So that's what we were saying about Mikel when he first arrived at the club and how he immediately sort of started to set the tone for what has followed at Arsenal. On the incident against Crystal Palace, obviously, which you all remember, I was there. It was one of the most brutal days I can remember at the Emirates, and kind of just a moment that summed up the fracture, how fractured that club was at the time. And Granit said, look, I call it a misunderstanding between myself and the fans. It was bigger than that, absolutely, for sure. I don't need to lie about it. Everyone knows the story. I still don't know exactly what happened and why, let's just say that. But when Mikel came, he had a very open conversation with me. My luggage was already done and packed. I was ready to leave. I had a contract on the table from another club. Mikel had 2 conversations with me and he convinced me to stay, to give me another chance. He wanted me to show that I was in the right place. From that day, I just had a feeling that every word he told me in this first conversation, everything was exactly like he said. That's why I say that in 2019, when Mikel came, he changed me completely as a human being on the pitch and outside the pitch. And we're seeing, what Granit's gone on to do, the sort of Indian summer he's gone on to have in his career, how he finished things at Arsenal, how he managed to have that sort of arc from that point that he talks about to how he finished and how important he was. Just so unfortunate he didn't get his hands on a Premier League title at Arsenal, because it would have been absolutely deserved that season. It didn't happen. He went to Leverkusen, was brilliant in Germany, was an invincible with Leverkusen's, come back to Sunderland, been one of the signings, if not the signing of the summer in the Premier League. What he's done for that football club, captain there already, scored his first goal against Everton at the weekend as well. It's been it's great to see. It's great to see, and long may it continue, because I've got an awful lot of respect for Granit Xhaka and how the mentality he has, the character he has. A lot of footballers could learn a lot from him. I hope he has a nightmare on Saturday. Be nice if he talks about that in that interview, actually, like cutting out the stupid yellow cards and red cards. It'd be nice if just for one day only, Granit, as long as you don't hurt anyone, obviously, just for one day only, you go back to the old Granit Xhaka. Just do something a little bit stupid, get yourself sent off. That'd be very handy for us, obviously, your old teammates. So do the job, Granit, please. But yeah, it's great to see him doing so well. I'm sure he'll get, a good reception from the Arsenal fans at the Stadium of Light on Saturday. He'll certainly get a good reception from his former teammates and his former manager as well. So yeah, if you want to read the full interview with Granit, do get down into the comments below. I'll leave it in the show notes. It was very, very, it's very worth your time. I just focused in on Saturday's game. Then Mikel's press conference is tomorrow, so we'll get the latest from him on the team news, whether anyone is back. It looks very, very unlikely. Obviously, Zubimendi is back. That's great. We saw him training. I was down the training ground on Monday, and he was training there. He limped off against Burnley, but was fine for training on Monday. So, all signs are that he'll be fine to return to the starting 11 this weekend, which you imagine he'll do. We'll go into that midfield with replacing Zubimendi, who played in the Champions League, and have Declan Rice and probably Eza, I would say, playing in the 10 role, and then Leandro Trossard over on the right. Imagine Ricardo Calafiori, who got a complete rest, didn't come on in the Champions League, which was good for him, having a proper 90-minute break. He'll be coming back into the side at left back. Imagine Timber, although Timber started, surprisingly so. I really thought Ben White had started midweek, but you'd imagine that Timber's going to continue at right back, and then Saliba Gabriel in the middle. I think it's a fairly easy team to pick, barring any injuries that we don't know about. I think it's a fairly easy team to pick this weekend. No one's going to be back. You can't imagine Gyökeres. Well, Gyökeres isn't going to be back. He's not been called up by Sweden. Martinelli's not been called up by Brazil. So those two are going to be absent, and none of the long-term absentees are back either. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we get some positive news from Mikel in terms of those players and how quickly they might be back after the international break when he has his press conference tomorrow. Right, let's go through a couple of questions and comments before we wrap this one up for today. If you're an Inside Arsenal Patreon member, just to say the Arsenal Press Pass show with myself, Sam Dean of The Telegraph, Simon Collins of The Standards, that will be being recorded a little bit later on today. That's a show that's exclusive to Inside Arsenal Patreon members. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you want to sign up and become a member, then again, the link is down in the show notes. Just sign up direct through Patreon. Don't do it through Apple. Do it through Patreon because Apple add on their little surcharges, which you don't need to do. So do it through Patreon. You get exclusive content. You get access to the Discord. You get access to the giveaways, everything like that I do over there. One of those people is 20 years ago. He has sent in a message, says, what do you make of Hincapié getting the nod at left fullback ahead of Miles? Has MLS fallen to the dreaded third choice after starting most of the season last year, or was this purely tactical? Judging from yesterday, Hincapié doesn't invert or go full-on chaos, but plays a more traditional left fullback role. Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely does. I think all three are very different. Calafiori and Miles, I suppose you can say, both play the inverted role, but Calafiori is a lot more chaotic than Miles is, and he gets a lot further forward than Miles does. But Hincapié is the more classic left back on the overlap, hugging the touchline, getting down the wing. I just think the sample size is too small to really say exactly what's going on yet or what is going to happen at left back. Because at this stage, I'm not surprised I'm not massively surprised Hincapié started, because he's at a stage where he needs minutes now to get up to speed because he's just not played. He's coming back from the injury, and the only way you're going to get up to match sharpness is by getting some minutes. So you've got to take the opportunity when you can to get them. So I don't necessarily think that definitely means that he is now third choice Miles. I think we're going to have to probably see how things go over the next 6 weeks or so, but it is going to be interesting. And look, I mean, Hincapié has not come in. You don't spend 60 million, do you? Or commit to spending 60 million, whatever it is now, for a player who's just not going to play. So it's going to be really interesting where Miles starts to get his minutes, whether we do start to see him shifted a little bit more into the middle at times, because he is going to need minutes as well. So it's a balancing act for Mikel. 3 into 2. We've seen it before when it comes to left back. It doesn't really go unless you start getting injuries. It doesn't really go. Someone is not going to get as many minutes. And you have to look at it and think, out of the 3 at the moment, it might well end up being Miles, unless you can find him minutes somewhere else on the pitch, which to me feels very, very important. So we'll have to see as the season progresses. 20 years ago, I think your name's Nick. We'll have to see how it goes as the season progresses. But I think can't quite sort of commit to a full answer on that just based on one game, when I think it's very apparent that Hincapié needs some minutes. MJ Lee says, hi Charles, what's your verdict on Nwaneri? Do you think he'll need a loan soon, maybe next summer, or is it better for him to keep getting a few more starts to build rhythm and confidence? I don't know. I just feel we're very. When I look at Nwaneri and I just think of where Foden was at this stage of his career at Man City, I really think they're kind of mirroring each other. You know, there were so many calls for Foden because of what he'd done. The minutes he'd been on the pitch when he was really young at City, he was like, get him more time, give him more time. And Pep was always, he's going to play. Just wait. He's young, and Nwaneri's in the exact same situation, I think. I mean, I said at the start of the summer that I wouldn't be shocked. I think it was in the predictions I did with James Benge on Inside Arsenal Extra Time. I said my sort of wild shout of the summer was that Ethan might go on loan in January. I don't think that'll happen now. The closer we're getting to it, I don't think it will happen, just because you don't want to weaken your squad halfway through the season when you're going for what Arsenal are going for. And I also am not sure Ethan will want to do that anyway, because he'll be looking at this thinking, I can get a Premier League titles winners medal here. So why would I push the mood? I think maybe in the summer that might be, look, he's just signed a new long-term contract. A loan wouldn't be the worst thing for him next summer. If you sort of look at it, you sit down with him, his agent, Mikel, and think, what's best for his progression now, a full season where he's going to get more minutes. I wouldn't be totally against it, but I'd want to make sure that the squad is protected and is not weakened by allowing him to do that. It wouldn't be the thing I'd really want to see. I'd rather him play for Arsenal and find some minutes at Arsenal, because I think he can really help here. But I don't think it'd be the worst thing if it was to happen. but I think he's still got a big, important part to play between now and the end of the season. No doubt about that. And Addy here says, last season, we saw how we won games 1-0 and struggled to get over the line by scoring one more goal, sometimes which led to a lot of draws. Do you think this team has learned from that experience to the point where we feel if we can't score more than one, we are secure enough for it not to end in a draw? Because this season, we've had fewer games ending 1-0, and we've had more consistent 2-0s and doing what we couldn't do last season. And if we do not win a trophy with limited injuries, will you classify that as a failure, seeing as how good we've started the season? And will the fans be right to question Arteta's ability to go over the line? I don't really want to answer that at the moment. I don't want to think about not getting over the line. I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, if we come to it, which hopefully we won't. But it will be a very, justified question at the end of the season if it wasn't to happen. So let's just see. Let's come to that at the end of the season if it does happen. But again, hopefully it doesn't. In terms of the first question, have we learned from last season's experience? I mean, I was looking at the results, and we've actually scored one or fewer 5 times in the first 10 games in the Premier League this season. I think it was only 3 last season. So we've actually had more games in the first 10 games this season where we've only scored 1 goal or fewer. Scored none didn't score against Liverpool. And then there was 1 goal wins against Fulham, against Palace. There was the 1-1 draw with Manchester City. And there was another one, I can't remember what it was now, but I think it's 5 games out of 10 they've only scored 1 or fewer. So I don't know if we have learned yet. I just think we're better defensively. We're not, we've only conceded 3 goals in 10 games. So that gives you better opportunity to win games if you're only scoring once. So I think that the change is, it's not so much in attack. I think the change is more in just how strong we've been defensively to be able to ensure that if we are only scoring once in a game, that we're getting something out of it. I mean, 3 of those games we scored once in the first 10 this season. We've won those games. We've got 9 points from them. So that's obviously a really handy, good position to be in. But anyway, look, thank you everyone for getting in touch. Appreciate it. As always, that is it for me today, unless you're an Inside Arsenal Patreon member, because you will be getting the Press Pass show with myself, Sam and Simon a little bit later on today. If you're not, I'll see you tomorrow after Mikel Arteta's press conference. Have a great day. Speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.